Shout out to Bring Our Q, Julius, you legend. We're going to do a joint interview, yeah? Yeah, we'll do a joint interview, Julius. Thanks for the support. You're a legend. From your girls, Raven and Ellie.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Getting our first look at Ellie Scotney's upcoming fight with Laura Soledad Griffa. What will be Ellie Scotney's first fight as a reigning defending champion, having beaten Shernika Johnson for the IBF title at Super Bantamweight. An experienced fighter, a serviceable fighter, albeit an aged fighter. Laura Soledad Griffa is 37 years old to Ellie Scotney, who's a very spry 25.
Ellie's 12 years younger than Laura.
I half expected Ellie Scotney's very next fight, her next fight, to be a unification match with one of the other champions in the Super Bantamweight division, of which there are 3. Ellie makes 4.
She's going to be fighting Laura instead.
Laura, who sports a professional record of 20 wins with 8 losses, no draws, 1 knockout, just run recorded knockout. She's not a knockout merchant. She's not a big puncher, but she is a serviceable fighter.
And it's noteworthy that in 28 professional bouts, 28, she's never been stopped. She's never been knocked out.
She has been in there with some good fighters, some really good fighters over the years, but she's never been stopped. That's a testament to how serviceable and capable this fighter is.
Coming off of 2 consecutive wins.
So as stated, I half expected Ellie Scotney's next fight following the Shernika Johnson fight to be a unification match with perhaps Mayerline Rivas, who also happens to be a matchroom fighter, WBA champion.
Coming off a very close call with Argentina's own Nazarena Romero.
The fight between Nazarena Romero and Mayerline Rivas, which was stopped in the 5th round due to an accidental clash of heads that resulted in a cut.
I had Nazarena Romero winning that fight. She managed to score a knockdown before the fight was stopped, and for me and my money, looked like she was out hustling and out muscling the reigning WBA champion. It was a close call for Mayerline Rivas, and I half expected that Mayerline would move on from that into a unification match with Ellie.
Ellie Scotney
Catford
is coming off that signature win over Shernika Johnson earlier this year, back in June. She's amassing a very respectable resume, a very respectable body of work in just 7 professional bouts. She's already faced the former champion in Maria Cecilia Roman or Helena Guanini, former EBU champion Mary Romero.
More recently, former IBF champion Shernika Johnson.
Former champion because Ellie took a blue belt.
Catford.
So what is the fight between Ellie and Laura Soledad Griffa going to look like? Well, as stated, Ellie's not a knockout merchant. She's not big on power. So, Ellie's not good for a knockout, and Laura's not good for being knocked out. Laura's never been stopped. So, in all likelihood, this is a fight that ends up going to a points decision.
What's it mean to be a serviceable fighter?
A fighter like Laura. Well, Laura's a serviceable fighter in the sense that she's not there to be hit. Defensively, she's actually pretty good. The movement, the angles, the jab. She's not there to lay down. That's what makes her a serviceable fighter. She will give you something to have to work around.
She's fought some really good fighters.
She's fought as many good fighters as she has fought, and she hasn't been stopped, is a testament to her durability and her ability. Having fought Tigresa Acuna more than once, Lucia Budersa,
Edith Soledad Matisse,
hard-punching Shannon O'Connell many years ago, and more recently hard-punching Nazarena Romero, who I mentioned earlier.
almost became WBA champion. If not for that clash of heads, looked a lot to me like she was about to beat Mayerline Rivas.
Laura Griffa shared the ring with that same Nazarena Romero some years ago in 2019, and even though she didn't win, she did hear the final bell. She did go the distance with a very hard puncher. She went the distance with Sigaline Lafarve, current reigning WBO champion at this weight. This is a very experienced fighter that knows how to survive and knows how to protect themselves.
Ellie not being a knockout merchant, not being big on power, it's not likely that she stops Laura.
It's likely the fight goes the distance with Laura Griffa just trying to survive and keep up with Ellie Scotney, who's much younger, much faster, and I think will show enough spite, show enough aggression that she will appear the ring general in the eyes of the judges. Ellie Scotney, one of her finer qualities is her shot selection.
Catford.
She picks her punches well, and even though she's not an artillery fighter, she is an accurate fighter. a sharpshooter.
Catford.
It's what makes Ellie Scotney so formidable. She is adaptable, malleable.
Catford.
Set to go down later on this month on the 30th on the undercard of Jai Opataya versus Jordan Thompson. Ellie Scotney on points is the logical choice.
Ellie Scotney to retain the IBF title via a points decision is the way I'm going with it.
So you're criticising that we are finding, or fighters on our shows are testing positive, but yet we're the only one doing testing. It's mental. So that's what I say about the Conor Ben thing. I can't be asked anymore. All of those people, they all talk shit, and they ain't got the money to just try and put their money where their mouth is. 30 grand for a pay-per-view. Sky should be saying to the promotional company, is there VADA testing for this event? You know? Broadcasters should be insisting on it. But how can you not have VADA testing for a pay-per-view event? And then when you get asked a question, go, no, what it is, it's confidential. No, it's not. No, is the answer. You didn't want to pay the 30 grand.
Eddie Hearn isn't pulling any punches when it comes to his critics, when it comes to his professional rivals, that they are not spending the money to make the sport safer that Matchroom is, and yet Matchroom seems to get most of the criticism.
Saying it's an absolute joke. Complete hypocrites. Eddie Hearn slams Boxer for no VADA testing for this past weekend's fight involving Liam Smith and Chris Eubank.
It's important to note that there was UKAD testing. There was UKAD testing, but not VADA testing. Ben Shalom was asked if there was VADA testing employed in the bout and refused to answer, citing confidentiality. Everybody didn't get the memo, though, as Joe McNally and Cale Sorland had no issues confirming that there was no VADA testing.
None.
For the bout, and the attempted secrecy on the part of Ben Shalom quickly unraveled. You wonder,
If Eddie Hearn and Matchroom's critics care so much about cleaning up the sport and they care so much about doping and anti-doping, why don't they have the energy for Ben that they have for Eddie?
Ben Shalom, on the absence of VADA testing for Smith versus Eubank 2, stated, when we have the confidence from UKAD that the fighters are going to be tested multiple times, then what more can we do? If we start having 45 different drug testing agencies, that's going to be chaos.
Nobody's asking you to have 45 testing agencies. 2 will suffice.
The defense from Shalom was that UKAD was already testing the fighters and they didn't want to involve more agencies. What more can we do? Ben Shalom asked.
You can do what Matchroom is doing. You can use UKAD and VADA simultaneously, layer upon layer of anti-doping tests.
As stated, the issue here is that Matchroom and Eddie Hearn's critics, when it comes to this particular subject, they don't seem to keep that energy across the board. They don't keep that energy for boxer shows or Queensbury shows, Golden Boy Promotions shows. They only seem to care about doping and anti-doping testing as it pertains to Matchroom, even when other promotional outfits aren't making the same effort that Matchroom is.
Paying for as much anti-doping testing as Matchroom is.
There was no VADA testing, Hearn told IFL TV about Smith versus Eubank 2. It's a pay-per-view event. Absolute joke. You wouldn't pay the 30 grand. Don't talk to me. Don't make comments. You couldn't lace my boots.
You ask yourself, why isn't anti-doping testing more uniform in the sport of boxing? And it's because there's no such thing as a free lunch. If you hire one of these agencies, a show does become that much more expensive to put on.
Now, once again, it seems to me that Matchroom is spending more on anti-doping agencies than any and every other promotional outfit out there. They don't just use UKAD like Boxer does. They also use VADA and, more recently, Drug-Free Sport, which normally handles anti-doping testing
In other sports.
People at Matchroom are also using them for anti-doping testing in the sport of boxing. Yet another layer.
Then you ask yourself, if they're making more of an effort than everybody else, why are they getting more criticism than everybody else?
Hearn believes the lack of VADA testing wasn't because Boxer and Wasserman were satisfied with UKAD testing, but rather because they didn't want to cover the costs affiliated with employing VADA. VADA is far better than UKAD at catching athletes with banned substances in their bodies. Fighters who have failed VADA tests have often passed all accompanying UKAD tests, and experts in the field believe that
UKAD testing isn't up to the standard of VADA,
put your hand in your pocket and make the sport safer.
demanded Eddie Hearn.
It's important to note here is that Eddie isn't asking the other promotional outfits to do something that they already aren't doing themselves, that Matchroom isn't already doing itself. Yet Matchroom receives more criticism than Boxer, more criticism than Queensberry.
The point of contention is that if Matchroom's critics want the sport to be safer, why aren't they applying the same pressure on Boxer or Queensberry that they're applying on Matchroom? Isn't that a bit hypocritical?
Don't ever rely on UKAD testing, Hearn asked how many times Eubank and Smith were tested in their camps, insisting that the number wouldn't be more than 2 to 3, and VADA would have added 6 additional tests each if they were employed. You do both UKAD and VADA. You talk about wanting to make the sport safer. You're all complete hypocrites. How can you not have VADA testing for a pay-per-view event?
The ideology is you add layer upon layer of anti-doping tests so that what one agency doesn't catch, perhaps another will. If UKAD misses something, VADA might catch it.
The reality of the situation is he doesn't want to pay for VADA testing. And, you know, again, I'm not a UKAD, I'm not a doping expert, right? But what I do know from being in this sport a long time, UKAD testing does not guarantee that someone's going to be tested before a fight. There's no guarantee. You know, so he's saying they've been tested multiple times and they're clear. He doesn't know. UKAD don't tell you. So we put VADA testing in place. So there's an additional layer of testing, which is guaranteed that the fighters will get tested before the fight. He doesn't, you know, like, I don't know who UKAD are testing of our stable of fighters. I don't know when they're planning to test people, and I don't know when the results are going to come back, and I don't get the results. So Ben Shalom cannot sit there and go, they've been tested multiple times, because he doesn't actually know, or had the results back. He doesn't know. That's the reality of it. And look, it just comes down to they don't want to spend the money. That's all it is. All these people preach about doing great things for the sport, being, you know, coming in, being the saviors of the sport, and want to talk, you know, detrimentally about us, but they don't want to spend the money to actually improve the sport. But, you know.
Dave Allen, who was in action on the undercard of this past weekend show opposite the ring unbeaten Fraser Clark, revealed that he wasn't even tested for this weekend's fight. He wasn't even tested by UKAD.
So where Ben Shalom wants you to believe that they can rely on UKAD to get the job done, that's not the case. That's not the situation. So why does Matchroom get more criticism than Boxer when Matchroom is doing more to catch fighters in the act?
It doesn't make sense, and what you'll find is when you start asking questions like this, why the criticism is so uneven, almost unwarranted, what you'll find is that Matchroom's critics suddenly become bored with the subject.
Because they don't actually care.
They don't care about the sport being a cleaner, safer sport for the fighters. They're just using that as a vehicle to continue to criticize Matchroom because they got some kind of hard-on for Eddie Hearn.
I don't understand it. I don't know what they're so mad at him about.
Frank Warren recently chimed in on the Alicia Baumgartner anti-doping fiasco, but how much money is Frank spending for anti-doping testing when it comes to his own shows? Is he spending what Matchroom is spending? Because if he isn't, then he's in no position to talk.
No Smoke Sport, who's done a fantastic job covering this subject.
They printed an article that states only 9% of boxers in the UK, which is UKAD's jurisdiction, only 9% of boxers in the UK are tested outside of competition. Only 9%. So can you really trust UKAD without that additional layer of testing from another anti-doping agency?
Only 9% outside of competition, 18% in competition, which is far too low a number.
You really care so much about making the sport safer. You bleeding hearts out there playing your violins. You want to talk about it? Let's talk about it. Where's the pressure on Boxer? Where's the pressure on Queensberry?
Because you care so much.
You know, Matchroom gets criticized whenever a fighter tests positive for something, as if that benefits Matchroom in any way. It's only through Matchroom's efforts that you even come to know that information.
But you're gonna criticize them?
What are you, an idiot? Finally, in men's welterweight news, Black Cobbs believes he's ridiculously faster and hits a little bit harder than Terence Crawford.
Is that why he got knocked out by Alexis Rocha?
Because of how hard he hits and how fast he is. Listen, he's a competitor. He's got to back himself when nobody else does. But that doesn't mean I have to agree with him.
Because I don't.
The only thing that's different between me and Terence is the fact that I'm ridiculously faster than Terence, said Cobbs to Mill City Boxing, and I hit a little bit harder on a certain level.
What level is that?
Cobbs fast hands and pernicious punching power was on full display against Maurice Hooker. Viewed as a slight underdog in the fight, the garrulous Cobbs dropped the former titleist 3 times before cruising to a unanimous decision victory. Ironically enough, Crawford shouted instructions to his good friend while sitting in his ringside seat.
It's been a year since Blair Cobbs had a fight. That Maurice Hooker fight they're talking about, that was in August of last year. Rumor has it he's not with Golden Boy anymore.
Which would explain why it's been such a long time since Blair had a fight, sporting a professional record of 16 wins with 1 loss.
1 draw and 10 knockouts.
He believes that he is faster and stronger than Terence Crawford, but there is no evidence to substantiate that claim. In the end, Cobbs simply wants his chance on the big stage. As he sits back and continues to dissect the overall game of the undisputed champion, he admits Crawford's ability to stop an opponent dead in their tracks is impressive. With that said, Cobbs' analysis brings him to one succinct conclusion when it comes to the power department. He has more so consistent punching power. I have out of nowhere punching power.
You've got a grand total of 10 knockouts. He's got 3 times as many knockouts as you've got. So this out of nowhere punching power?
He's got 31 knockouts to your 10 spread across 3 weight classes, the welterweight division included, where he has quite literally stopped every welterweight they've put in front of him, Errol Spence included.
Blair isn't on Terence Crawford's radar. In truth, I don't really think he's on anybody's radar.
Rumor has it he is a network and promotional free agent, free to go wherever he wants to go for the fights. The meaningful ones, the significant ones, I would suggest maybe he should go over to the PBC, see if they can't find some work for him. Go over to Showtime. Boots is over there.
Jaron Boots Ennis.
No, he's not necessarily a PBC fighter. He's not one of Heyman's boys. He's actually with Cameron Duncan, though all the same. Fighting Jaron Boots Ennis could make a splash.
Many of you guys think he would beat Jaron Boots Ennis.
The relevance of Blair Cobbs to today's welterweight division is that both Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford are set to fight again. And in all likelihood, they're going to be leaving the welterweight division. Left behind are fighters like Jaron Boots Ennis, former champion Keith Thurman, and of course, Blair Cobbs, who has 1 lone defeat, 1 knockout loss to Alexis Rocha, which isn't the worst thing in the world.
You win some, you lose some.
But you know, he's there. He is part of the next wave of welterweights. Jaron Boots Ennis, a Montestanionis, the remnant, the
lingering spirit of Keith Thurman, Michael McKinson.
I don't think Blair Cobbs is on the eve of starting a junior middleweight campaign, being honest with you. I don't think he's cut out to fight those boys up there. They're too big.
Maybe he should see about fighting a Montestanionis who hasn't fought in over a year's time. He's coming right off that impressive victory over Radzov Butaev, then unbeaten. He needs a tick-over fight. He needs a tune-up fight. He can tune up with Blair Cobbs.
And the same is true in reverse. For Blair, now would be the most opportune time to fight a Montestanionis, because a Montes like Blair hasn't fought in over a year's time, so maybe they can do that.
He's got Terence Crawford on the brain, but he's not actually on Terence's radar.
Why would he be? But very soon, all the alphabet titles at welterweight will be redistributed, and if Blair plays his cards right, maybe, just maybe, he can get in position to fight for one.
Did you just spend 4 minutes talking about Blair Cobbs?
I didn't have enough time to do a segment on a more relevant story.